Time to make a replacement for this, and I'm going to show you how I do it. I'm going to make it like the other ones that I made in the video, but larger. If you look in my channel and look at all my videos, you'll see one where I made some lights for a fence and some instructional video there. I'll make these a little bit different, but not much. I'm going to start with this piece of 6-inch PVC pipe. I'm going to cut it down to about 18 inches, and I'm going to use the remaining 6 inches for something else. Here I'm going to cut the pipe 18 inches long using my crosscut sled and a stop block on the end. Rotating it evenly will give me a smooth cut all the way through, all the way around. So here are all the components: the 6-inch pipe, the 2-inch pipe, and the PVC plyboard or deck board. And I'm just showing you relative size associations to each piece, so you can get an idea of how big they are. These are the little risers that I cut out of the 2-inch PVC, and I'm just mocking that up right now. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my router and run it around the edge, rounding over the edges with a 1/4 round bit, and that will make the appearance a little nicer on the edges. But other than that, nothing fancy here. So you'll see I've got 4 of them, or 3 or 4 of them, I can't remember. And I'm just going to do several of them. I'm going to eventually make several of these. And so I'm just going to do all of them at one time. Okay, I'm just laying out the center lines so that I can begin to drill them and put the groove in for the PVC, the 2-inch PVC that's going to go in the middle of each of these. And that's all I'm doing here. Setting the centers up is going to make the next step a little bit easier. You don't have to drill these grooves. I chose to because it's helping me line things up, but it's not a requirement. The grooves that you're going to see me cut here in the next step. And the way I'm doing this is I'm going to take this hole saw that I have, and I took both bits and offset them just a little bit so that each one cuts on a different center line, and that allows me to cut a little bit of a wider groove, and that groove is just perfectly the right width for the PVC to sit in, and that allows it to snugly fit down in there and not shift around. It's not a requirement for the physical strength of it, I don't think, but I'm doing it mainly just for making things glue together a little bit better. You could definitely just glue this together directly piece to piece with epoxy. Be sure you rough up the 2 surfaces where you put the epoxy glue together. Otherwise, it may peel apart. But I've had good success with this method, so I just continue to do it. And it's not that time consuming. As you can see, it drills very quickly. This next step, I didn't get a lot of footage of it, but I'm drilling holes in the pipe in 2 locations. these two holes are 3/4 inches in diameter, and I'm gonna drill two, and they hold these lamp holders. And I took some conduit nuts and put one on the inside and one on the outside to secure the lamp holders. And these are just all-weather lamp holders that you get from Home Depot for, I think they're $2. Maybe it's $2.15 or something a piece. So I put one in each end facing out, so the light bulbs will be facing out. And they have a grommet to protect from weather. So, and this step here, what I'm doing is I'm just grinding a groove or coping these short pieces to fit well against the 6-inch pipe so that my contact surface for the glue is better. And it doesn't take very long. What I'm doing here is I'm just showing you the JB Weld epoxy that I ended up using to hold this together. Now, I've tried several epoxies, and this epoxy seems to be the best so far that I've found. Somebody else might have a better suggestion for a better epoxy. And I've just put the glue on there and clamped it together. The top piece is not permanently located on or permanently affixed on there, just the bottom was. And I just put the lamp holders in there before I glued it, and I just, after I got the initial glue up, I went ahead and mixed up more epoxy and then just kind of dumped it down inside there and mixed it around to make a little bit better bond, so it'll be very, very secure. And I don't have to just rely on the two edges to contact each other. I can rely on the epoxy. And here I'm showing you how much epoxy is down inside there and the location of the lamp holders. In this step, I'm just fitting what's called a T-bar, a light fixture bracket, and I'm going to put a link in the description on what these are. But I'm going to connect two together, so I'm going to wire those in parallel to each other. And just pre-wiring it here because the leads are not quite long enough to reach each other. And so I'm going to extend those two pieces out, and then I'll be gluing on the base in the next step. And I'm just mocking up the fitment of where the holes are going for the T-bar bracket. So after mocking that up, I noticed that the wires would need a little bit more clearance underneath the T-bar. So here I'm just cutting a little section out on the back for it to have a little bit of space for the wires so it wouldn't get pinched. And I'm going to mix up some more of the JB Weld epoxy and apply that just down in the groove. I don't want too much on the outside because it just makes a lot more work on the sanding part of things, and you don't have a lot of room in there to get sandpaper. So here I'm just putting it down inside the groove, and since I pre-fit that all together when I glued the top, those will just sit perfectly down inside those grooves for a good surface contact and should hold well. And it's a little bit tricky to feed the wires through there, but if you take your time, you shouldn't be a problem at all. So once I get the fitment together, I'm going to take a bungee cord and wrap that around this to put pressure on it, hold it together really tightly till it dries. Probably not necessary, but I didn't want any chance of it to move around on me. So this seemed to work pretty good for me before. After it dried, I got my sander, and I'm going to try and clean up any excess epoxy that might have oozed out. And this really takes some patience to sand down in those little cracks and crevices, but if you like to sand, it's not a problem. The rest of the PVC edges, I don't recommend running a heavy or like a 80 grit or anything like that. Use like a 240 grit sandpaper or something, or something in the 200s. That way you won't put deep scratches in it. Because when you paint it, you need it rough, but you don't want it with deep scratches before you paint it. So this is the final glue up and sanded. And I'm going to wipe it down with some, not thinner, I think it's denatured alcohol. And just take any debris or grease, fingerprints, and oils off of it that I can, so I won't get like fish eyes or any of that stuff in the spray paint. And I'm just going to use Rust-Oleum hammered finish silver paint on this, and it seems to be very durable. I used it on the other lights and they've been holding up really well. Mainly with PVC, you don't want sunlight to get to it because it makes it brittle. Ultraviolet light, it's not very tolerant to that, so it makes it brittle and it'll just fall apart and crack, and all kinds of things will happen to it, and it won't be very pretty long. So the initial coats are lighter, and then from there I gradually do heavier coats. But initially I want to get the first coat on there lightly and let it stick. And it's about a 60-degree day, and so I can do the coats pretty quickly, within short periods of time, a few minutes, and I'd start to warm up a little more later on, so I could just continue to put coats on pretty quickly. I put it on pretty thick with this because this is it's supposed to be 2 times coverage, so it goes on pretty thick pretty easily, so it doesn't run or anything like that. And I took the can and I put it in warm water to warm the can up, and that made it spray a little bit better and smoother, give me a little bit better finish. And here it is, basically all completely painted, and I have minimal debris in it. It looks really nice. So this is the T-bar bracket that I talked about. This is important. And here's the final product. And it turned out really good. It looks great at nighttime. And so I hope you enjoyed this, and thank you for watching.